But we do have special guests on the program from time to time, and we like a lot of them, too, like Congressman Joe Heck, hopefully soon to be our next U.S. Senator. I guess that was just an endorsement of sorts, Congressman. I'm pulling for you. Welcome.
Hey, Dan, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, good to have you back. State of the Union tonight. I presume you're going to be there?
I am.
What do you want to hear from our president tonight, and what do you think we're going to hear?
Well, my guess is that he'll probably spend his time talking about his own so-called legacy achievements and probably propose more of the policies that he knows has no chance of being enacted by Congress. But I hope he would actually use the opportunity to finally articulate to the American people a foreign policy strategy that addresses, the critical events unfolding around the globe. And as we've seen, just tonight, the U.S. sailors being taken into custody by the Iranian Navy. These are issues that his failed foreign policy have allowed to occur, and I hope finally he will start to address some of these and let the American people know that he has plans to keep this country safe.
It's a pretty big list, too. I was looking at all of the things, that you're concerned about, and I think until you see them all in one place, on a piece of paper where you hear somebody talk about it, you don't realize how many foreign policy challenges are out there. A lot of them are a direct result of his policies, right?
Well, certainly, when he first came into office and he canceled the missile defense system that we were going to put into Poland and the Czech Republic, that sent us a signal that perhaps we were not as dedicated to standing with our allies as we should be. I think it certainly sent a message to Vladimir Putin, and the president's Russian reset policy that he then tried to use to reengage with Russia has failed, and we've seen now with Russia annexing Crimea, invading Ukraine, peddling influence through the Middle East. Do you think Vladimir wants to return Russia to its former glory?
Do you think that single act led to a lot of what has happened with Putin in Russia?
I think it was one of the first signals that Vladimir was able to see that perhaps we did not have the commitment to our European allies that we have had since the end of World War II. And I don't think that was the sole issue, but certainly one of them. And it also comes with drawing red lines and then not doing anything when those red lines are crossed. It emboldens our adversaries to try to push the envelope as far as they possibly can. It has, with China, taking belligerent actions in the South China Sea and trying to expand their territorial influence. And we sit idly by while they actually build new islands in the South Pacific.
Oh, yes.
So these send a message that we're not willing to confront our adversaries and allows them to continue really to run slipshod over the United States.
From my own perspective, being someone who thinks Ronald Reagan was perhaps one of the greatest presidents we ever had, I picture what President Obama did with the Poland and the missile defense system, as you talked about, and I try to picture Ronald Reagan doing that, and honestly, I just can't.
Well, certainly not. It certainly would not have happened. And, again, this idea of peace through strength, as Ronald Reagan espoused, is critically important. And you cannot think about degrading military capability or not willing to keep military capability forward deployed in order to deter our adversaries, assure our allies, and respond to crises like this administration has done since day one.
Congressman Joe Heck is here from Southern Nevada. He is running for Harry Reid's United States Senate seat. Congressman, I know I am very concerned. Well, I've been concerned about North Korea for a while. We already know that they're a rogue nation, but we're looking at Iran. And between the two of them, they're pretty much ignoring what the UN Security Council has said regarding weapons testing. And now that we've gone into this nuclear agreement with Iran, I don't know how on earth we can have any confidence they're going to stick to it, judging from what we've seen.
Well, and I think when you reference North Korea, this administration's approach to North Korea has been a strategic patience. That's exactly what they call it. And we saw what that has yielded. It has yielded additional missile tests and now a potential hydrogen bomb test. When you look at what's been going on in Iran, certainly they have failed to follow the United Nations Security Council resolutions regarding ballistic missile testing. So what makes this administration think they can be trusted to follow the UNSCR on the nuclear program? I think it's incredible that the president said that this agreement, the nuclear agreement, was built on verification, not on trust. But yet you go back and look at the agreement, and there's very weak verification measures in place.
Let's turn to ISIS for a moment. As we talk about the Islamic State as they are, we talk a lot about Iraq, and we talk about Syria, but we may have a larger problem with them before long because not only Afghanistan, India they're seeing indications of problems there, and North Africa now as well. They're spreading, not shrinking.
You're correct. As they perhaps have lost some land within Iraq and Syria, and congratulations to the Iraqi security forces in being able to recapture Ramadi, but they are spreading across all of North Africa, through the Middle East, into Afghanistan, Pakistan, and into India. And so while they, don't forget that the goal of ISIS and its leader, al-Baghdadi, is to create a caliphate that stretches across the entire North African and Middle Eastern region. And as long as they have a center of gravity in Raqqa, the city in Syria, which is serving as their de facto capital, and as long as they function as a quasi-state, they will continue to grow and exert influence all throughout the region.
Congressman Joe Heck is with us here on the Dan Mason Show at News Talk 780 KOH. By the way, Congressman, I want to congratulate you along with your colleagues Mark Amodei and Crescent Hardy. You all voted no on the omnibus bill. I hated that bill. I hate anything that's that big, but a lot of what was in that bill gave the president pretty much everything he wanted. No changes in the vetting process for refugees. He's just pretty much able to continue with the policies he's been putting forth, hasn't he?
Well, Dan, when I first ran, I said that my goals were, one, was to protect our nation through a strong military, to control our spending, and to set conditions to create jobs. And that bill failed to accomplish any one of those three things. It continued to cut the military budget far below where it should be in order to maintain our national defense. It actually increased spending for the first time year over year since I've been elected. And it put in place a visa program that would allow more foreign workers to come into the United States and displace American workers for jobs. And so it was contradictory to the three main principles that I ran on back in 2010 and that I continue to hold as I evaluate bills that come forward.
President's probably going to talk tonight some about his gun control initiatives, expanded background checks. He wants to spend $500 million on mental health programs, although he wasn't at all specific about what exactly they would spend that money on. You're not a fan of what he's up to at all, are you?
Well, I'm not a fan of when the president tries to act unilaterally and circumvent Congress. And so we know that the issue isn't about gun control. It's about decreasing gun violence. And we need to come up with a strategy to actually decrease gun violence. And we know that a big piece of that is providing mental health services and additional mental health funding. However, the issues that the president also brought up in that executive order that concern me is the ability for the Social Security Administration to now submit names to the National Background Database of individuals who should be precluded from owning a gun based on a diagnosis that they are paying a disability claim on without due process. So your name gets put into the database, and then you have to figure out a way to get it taken out, as opposed to having due process before having your name put into a database. So that there are things in there that concern me. Additionally, they want to expand who has to be a licensed firearm dealer if you, quote, make a livelihood by selling guns. But they don't define what that means. It means you might sell one or two guns. You might sell 100 guns. It's very individualized, and that leaves it open to too much interpretation and allows perhaps an administration to target certain individuals, much like the IRS when they were targeting conservative nonprofit organizations.
You know, I saw an interview that you did recently, and you said something I thought was very interesting. It's the people that don't intend to follow the law that are the problem, like for example, straw buyers, somebody who buys a gun and then turns it over to somebody else, even though they may know that person's liable to be a problem. That's somebody that we need to focus on, right?
You're right. Look, we have to make sure that all the records that need to be in the database are there. Those people that right now by law are prohibited from having a gun.
That's been a problem too, hasn't it?
It has been. In the past, I have voted for actually additional funding to help states be able to submit those records. Secondly, you have to prosecute individuals who fraudulently try to get a firearm. Believe it or not, there are criminals out there that will go to a gun store and fill out the form and try to buy a gun. When they're identified, they need to be prosecuted for that crime. And then, as you mentioned, the straw man buyer, that third party who's purchasing a gun for someone that is known to be prohibited from owning a firearm and turning it over to them, they need to be prosecuted. So you do those three things, you increase mental health services, that's the pathway to decreasing gun violence.
Got another Republican presidential debate coming up here in a couple of days, and we'll have one more before Iowa, New Hampshire. We're getting closer to actual votes being on the table now. That should start to change this dynamic a whole bunch, won't it?
Well, I certainly think that after the early four states, New Hampshire, Iowa, Nevada, South Carolina, that we'll start to see individuals perhaps fall off, withdraw from the race, and we'll start to see where those votes go and hopefully come down to the 3 or 4 top contenders to make their way through to the convention.
Yeah, polls are fun, but real votes tend to have a lot more to say about all of this, and it's still a long way from now until November. Good to catch up with you again. Congressman Joe Heck with us here.
Thanks, Dan.
Enjoy the State of the Union tonight as best you can, anyway.
Thanks. Appreciate being with you.
All right, there you go. 3:47 is our time.